Hey, everybody, welcome to the 32 Insights podcast. I'm here with my co host Tommy, and today we have the one and only Dan Viens from the Seahawks Forever podcast. Dan, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. I'm glad to be here, especially because of what it means, the reason that we're here.
Yes. Hey, look, and we wanted to have you on the show for a long time, man. It's just a bummer it didn't work out the season, but let me ask you this question, man. If I told you in the beginning of the season that the Seahawks would be in the Super Bowl with a 14-3 record, new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, totally new, offensive regime, what would your response be?
I'd have thought it was a dream. I said at the beginning of the season, I thought it was an 11 or 12 win team. I felt like it was closer to 12 after seeing as much of training camp as I did this year, and just felt like this team had a real shot. But I knew what they were up against. I knew the Niners and the Rams were going to be legitimate. I thought the Rams were the best team in the league at the beginning of the season. I knew that 6 new starters on offense, including a quarterback and switching your wide receiver one and a new play caller and a whole new offensive staff. I kind of looked at this year in what we remember now that 2012 was. That I thought this team's going to win a lot of games. We knew the defense was going to give us a chance to win every week. We didn't know how long it would take for the offense to come together. And I thought by the end of the year, this team is going to be difficult to deal with. They're going to win a playoff game, maybe two. And then we're going to go into the offseason all feeling like, okay, next year they're a contender from the jump. Everyone's going to recognize it. And here we go. We're there a year early. And that brings with it its excitement and also some of its drawbacks. We're seeing some of that already. Everybody wants a piece of you when you win. And so, before you hit record here, I said it, I'm still wrapping my head around it. It still feels surreal because I wasn't expecting it this year. Yeah. And it even though it in some ways it feels like just yesterday we were at Super Bowl 49, it also feels like a million years ago. It's just so hard to get here that it takes a while to get used to.
Yeah. And look, Tommy was a believer, man. Tommy told me hey, he was like, Sam Darnold is going to be okay. He's a really good quarterback. I wasn't a believer of Sam Darnold, man. I thought he was like a 1-year wonder. Yeah. I didn't think he could do it again. But hey, look, man, Tommy's the brains of the show, man.
It's good to have your roles. Yeah, no, I felt good about the Sam Darnold move at the time. In fact, I remember talking about it on the show before it even happened. Like, hey, because my buddies and I are always talking about, sometimes we get a little crazy and we get carried away with what if scenarios, right? And you just knew that Geno was getting older and that maybe he wouldn't be a fit for what they want to do with the rest of the roster, that the timeline was just off. And so we tossed around the idea of like, hey, Sam Darnold might be available.
Yeah.
But you didn't think it was going to work out this good, really. And that's been maybe of the many storylines this year, watching his progression and take the next step, especially kind of after stubbing his toe week 11 against the Rams and how he's come back from it. And then the way he's let it rip in the playoffs has just been fun to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I rationalized it, right? Let's just jump back to the start of free agency last spring. I was, we traded Geno, let DK go, or traded DK as well to the Steelers. And when we signed Sam Darnold, I was sitting there like, you know what? Even if he isn't able to repeat what he did last season, what we're getting here is a quarterback that I think generally at that point, people probably had the same tier as Geno Smith, because Geno was playing well in Seattle. I wasn't great, but he played well. And so I genuinely thought he was in the same tier, but I was like, okay, we're getting a younger quarterback on a cheaper deal. And I think we're getting a high, with Sam, it was always a chance of a higher ceiling than what we were getting from Geno. And that's exactly what unfolded for us this season. I think it worked out to complete perfection for Seattle, right? Dan, like you said, at the beginning of the season, I said about 11 win team, right? We went 10-7 season before. I thought we had improved in the offseason, added some good players, but it happened fast. This rise from Seattle happened rapidly and definitely surprised me in a great way. I'm definitely not mad to be wrong about my prediction this season. But Mo, you were spot on with it.
I was spot on. I said 14-3. I got the record right, but the reason I got the record right was I thought this defense was going to be like the best defense in the league, right? And they have been, right? And I thought
Yeah, you weren't wrong.
Sam Darnold was going to be carried by the defense and the running game, so we were going to kind of look like a like the 2023 Niners type of type of club. And looks like Sam Darnold proved me wrong. Before that NFC Championship game, Dan, everybody used to ask me, "Hey, do you trust Sam Darnold? Can
Right?
do you trust your quarterback?" And I had like this, pause in my voice, right? Every
Yeah.
time people ask me these questions. But now, after that game, like there's no pause in my voice. I automatically say, yes, I trust Sam Darnold.
Yeah, it's kind of like he's been to the darkness, right? He's been through the forest and he's battled all the creatures and all the monsters and everything. He came out the other side stronger for it. He really did. I think we saw a tangible shift in kind of how he sort of recoiled after week 11 and reset himself, and the offense too. At the same time, it was almost like I used the analogy on my show earlier today that it's kind of like when you get injured and you have to just let it settle down for a little bit first, and then you slowly work your way back up, and then you finally reach a point in your rehab where you realize, okay, now I can turn it loose again. I can run full speed. I can let it rip. And that's kind of what we saw. We saw, in the moment when it was happening, I kind of thought it was just Sam being more cautious, right? Not throwing into tight windows as much and just playing game manager. But I think it was the offense as a whole. I think it was Kubiak's approach a little bit, trying to
Yeah.
protect him, and that was when the heavy lifting was really done on the running game. And really, it's like they just kind of shifted their attention a little bit. Like, we're going to take some pressure off the quarterback here and let you just kind of get your wits about you again, and we're going to focus on fixing this other part of the offense that we've seen flashes from, but we hadn't seen any consistency out of. And then we're going to build it up together. And then about week 16 or 17, it just felt like, okay, now we can hit the ground running and let it rip again. And he came out a better quarterback on the other side of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the quarterback is always the most important position in the team. But hey, we can't talk about the 2025 Seahawks without John Schneider, and
Oh
some of the moves that he made, starting from the draft. Getting Rashid Shaheed, Nick Emanwari for DK Metcalf. I mean, that's a trade that I would take any day of the week. All right, and man, that was a great offseason. What did you think about John Schneider's offseason and him winning the executive of the year? How did he do this in your opinion? Like what happened?
Yeah, I was so happy for him when he got that award. He really deserved it. He took a beating last offseason. All those kind of short-term Band-Aid free agent signings in 2024, like almost across the board, none of them worked out. And he got beat up a little bit for that, but something shifted for him about 5 years ago in the way that they draft. And he's talked about it pretty openly, not focusing on need as much and just taking the best player available. But even in their evaluation and the things that they look for in this kind of modern college football world, they value guys that stay at one program, and don't transfer around a lot. Some other things, they really dialed that in. But I'll say this too, and this is a testament to just hanging around long enough and doing what he's done at a high level. Sometimes you have to get a little bit lucky too.
Yeah,
And there's a couple examples of this, right? If Geno Smith doesn't demand a trade,
yeah,
we don't end up with Sam Darnold. And as much as I thought, and even Clint Kubiak said it at the time he was hired, that this offense would have done some favors for Geno Smith. I think he certainly would have been better this year in this offense in Seattle than he was in Las Vegas, certainly. But how often do we see good or even viable starting quarterbacks available on the free agent market? They're just never there. It's usually
yeah,
guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? Or Clayton Tune. It just like pick whatever kind of journeyman quarterback there is. You don't get starting level quarterbacks coming off good seasons in their prime that are available. And if he hadn't have been, if the Vikings had locked him up to a deal, where would we be?
yeah, yeah,
Is it the Michael Silver story? Is it Aaron Rodgers this year?
yeah,
Right? Same thing with DK. If he doesn't demand a trade, maybe that offense looks pretty good with DK and JSN, but you don't have Nick Emanwari, to your point.
yeah,
Maybe you don't have Jalen Milroe, and that might pay off for us still down the road. Like,
yeah,
there's a lot of things, and then just nailing the 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 free agent signings, and not just Cooper Kupp and DeMarcus Lawrence, who didn't just have a lot left in the tank as players, but what they brought as far as leadership and kind of balancing out this young roster. But even a guy like Josh Jones, they've struggled for years to get a good, solid swing tackle that could come in and give you, solid, competent reps at both tackle spots. And that cost him games in the past when you had to run Stone Forsythe or Michael Jarrell out there. Well, I don't know if we're still playing today if Josh Jones doesn't play as well as he did those last couple of games down the stretch when Charles Cross was out. So he really had a perfect offseason, and then it was the culmination of like 5 good years of drafting. And you can just see it all throughout the roster, like kind of turned over every stone, just about every way you go about building a roster. He dipped into it, and kudos to him because he's as good a guy as he is good at his job. And so I've always rooted for him.
Absolutely. I mean, another thing is John Schneider did a great job of drafting in the late rounds. I mean, it's obviously without a question how well he's done in the early rounds, right? First round pick. It started, I think when he talked about he's been building it over years, it started when he picked Charles Cross at pick 9. Yeah. And then in the second round jumps and gets Mafe and K9. The next year you turn around and you keep
Lucas in the third that year.
Yeah. Abe Lucas in the third. Exactly. And Rick Woolen in the 5th. And it was just the consistent building and over the course of the years and the change of draft philosophy, making the smart moves, especially this offseason. This offseason was a lot of smart moves in the free agent market, adding veteran pieces, adding depth pieces in places that have hindered us in the past. All of which were put together to build what we're seeing today. And of course, John's very strategic with his in-season trades. He isn't always going after the top guy, right? Oh, we could go get Quinn and Williams. No. We're going to go get guys that fit needs, are going to fit in well with us and help us build what we're building and not just take over and transform our defense, such as Shaheed, Leonard Williams, and so on. So he's been very methodical and strategic about his moves. We were really patient this year in free agency, and I know a lot of fans didn't like that. Nothing new for us though. But it all was very methodical and strategic and built what we're seeing today. And I mean, John Schneider has absolutely killed it, over the last 4 or 5 years.
And even like 9 undrafted free agents, I think it's like almost 20% of the roster. It's crazy. And it's that I think that's why this roster seems to be not egoless, because they all have egos, but they're very unselfish. They play for each other. And I think it's because you have such a mix, the first round picks have hit, the middle round picks, like you said, have hit. And then you have, so many undrafted free agents and what those guys have had to do to earn it. And then credit to the coaching staff that when he hands those players over to him, that they're not afraid to play him. They don't care about draft status. It's just who plays better between Monday and Friday. And that's who's going to see the field on Sunday. And where would we be without Drake Thomas? And the job he did at weak side linebacker after Tyrese Knight got off to that kind of weird start this year and just wasn't as effective. Where would we be without Ty Okada filling in for Julian Love and Kobe Bryant at different times this year? It's really a cool group. And that's, even if I think if you're watching this Super Bowl and you're not a fan of either team, you don't have a dog in the fight, right? Like, how can you not like this matchup and how these teams were built and how they play? I think it's just a fun matchup, even if you don't have a rooting interest.
Yeah. And the most impressive thing for me, Dan, is John Schneider just trusting that he drafted the right players. He just needed the coaches to coach these guys up. Because, remember all that conversation in the preseason? Oh, they need to get this O-line, and they need to get Drew Dahlman, and they need to get so-and-so and so-and-so. But, John Schneider just, he drafted Gray Zabel, dog, by the way. Yeah. And he said, hey, look, I'm going to trust my coaching staff to coach these guys up. We're going to improve the running game, and, credit to Clayton Kubiak as well, staying with that running game all season. And right now it's paying dividends.
I think it's a good cautionary tale, or it's a good lesson for the casual fan out there. Like, we all went through it in the offseason, every single day that went by that they didn't make a tangible move that fans could point to say, see, they are trying to fix the offensive line, for example. Right. I mean, how patient he was and how how much he understood the market. He didn't just panic after they lost out on Will Fries and turn around and sign Tevin Jenkins or Mekhi Becton, because how'd those guys work out for their respective teams this year, right? He knew what he was doing. He had a plan, and he wasn't going to alter that plan because of some external pressure. And I try not to spend too much time patting myself on the back. I'm wrong as much as I'm right. But all through the offseason, I was pounding the table for continuity. And while we needed to add one key piece, and I was a big fan of Zabel, but there were other options there as well. You had to add one upper tier piece to that group, but they had spent so much draft capital, more than any other team in the league over the previous 5 years, on the offensive line. At some point, I just wanted that to settle down and get a good coaching staff in there and let 5 guys play and see if you can build it. And that's exactly what happened, because every fan, to your point, this offseason wanted us to go about rebuilding the offensive line the way the Bears did. Go make a trade for a left guard, sign a record-setting deal, give a center $80 million, and then go make another trade for a Pro Bowler at right guard and rebuild the whole thing that way and throw the old group out. It's not what they did, and it's worked out pretty damn well for them.
Yeah.
I actually want to just bounce. Sorry. So I was on a Packers podcast last night. They had me on. We were talking about the Super Bowl a little bit, and to your point, they were talking about signing Aaron Banks from San Francisco, and they were like, "Man, what happened there?" They
a lot of money to give a guy. 49er fans they weren't even sad to see leave.
No, and they expressed their displeasure about how much they paid him and what he didn't do for them this season, and truly just a testament to staying patient. I think that's the right formula, especially with offensive linemen in free agency, right? Let's just say it how it is, right? There isn't going to be elite offensive linemen that hit the market. It's going to be a very rare occasion where even if it even happens, where there's going to be an elite offensive lineman that hits the market. Teams know the value. So with the second free agency opens, these average mid-tier offensive linemen are going to get contracts that rival those that are top-tier offensive linemen. So especially when trying to rebuild the offensive line, it's important to stay patient. Drew Dahlman, I'm sure a lot of Seahawks fans wanted Drew Dahlman. You know what? And I think Drew Dahlman is a fine player, but for what he was going to get paid, it just didn't make sense for Seattle and what they were trying to build. Will Freeze from Minnesota, he didn't want to do the physical, so he ended up signing with Minnesota and
coming off a severe broken leg. Of course.
That's crazy. And look, I was at the 49ers game, the divisional round, and man, I was just so impressed by the athleticism of this offensive line, especially an unsung hero to me is Jalen Sandell, man. That guy can move, right? We're talking about centers right now. We're talking about Drew Dahlman. Jalen Sandell is a dog, man. Undrafted, right, as well? He's undrafted. Yep. And man, like that game was just impressive. That was a physical game. And to follow that up with the NFC Championship game, Dan, I want to ask you, another unsung hero is DeMarcus Lawrence, right? With that fourth down play. And Sean McVay called it a fortuitous bust. What did you think about that comment, man? To me, like I listened to DeMarcus Lawrence after the game, and he was like, you know what? I just saw Kyron Williams just running too fast. Like he didn't even look at the blitz. So what are your thoughts about Sean McVay? And like, he has this knack for like whining after the game every time he loses.
He does. It's weird. And I felt like McVay was different this year. I've talked about it quite a bit on the show. Like he spends the first 5 minutes of his post-game press conference after the NFC title game talking about how good the Seahawks are and how much respect he has for them. And then he says something like that. It's like the ultimate backhanded compliment, right? Where that wasn't the case at all. It was a veteran player who's seen it all, making a reaction in the moment. And it just, it goes all the way back to the beginnings of OTAs, right? And in getting all these guys so comfortable in this scheme and trusting each other and what everybody's responsibilities are, that in a moment like that, you realize that like I can come off my guy because this is where I think it's going. we don't hear about that a lot on this defense. We don't hear a lot about ad-libbing. We hear the opposite of that it's very intricate in how the back end and the front half gets married up and how these guys work together and communicate so they're all on the same page. We heard a lot more of this in regards to the Legion of Boom. Those guys knew each other so well, and they would sometimes come off of their primary because they could just sense something was going on. That's what happened here was a football play. I thought it was weird, but I also thought, and I was really surprised that we got the news yesterday that Snead and McVay had extended, because I kind of thought McVay seemed like he was pushing himself and this team harder this year than he normally does.
Yeah.
Like his reactions to things on the sidelines were more intense and kind of frantic. And it almost felt like maybe he realizes this could be, they're getting near the end of the road with Matt Stafford, and you don't know how long that roster was going to be able to make this run. Like they're young, they've got cap space, and they're set up pretty well for the future, but they got some guys they got to pay. And maybe he could just see that. I just felt like he was wired way tighter since week 11 than I've ever seen him before. Maybe we got in his head a little bit. Maybe it was a realization that, like, crap, it's not just the 49ers I got to worry about now. Now this guy up in Seattle's pain in my ass too.
Yeah. And man, that game was crazy from start to finish. Looks like, but there's been a huge competition between Sean McVay and Mike Macdonald, and right now, like, Mike Macdonald's gotten like the best of him this series. And like, for me, one of the biggest testaments was Mike Macdonald's just going for it, trusting Sam Darnold. Hey, this is going to be a shootout. Like, we're going to go for it. We're not going to play this conservative type ball. And just trusting Sam Darnold. What did you think about a defensive minded head coach making that call?
It's one of the most impressive things about watching McDonald do what he does is he really does have his finger on everything. And he's so, they asked John Schneider about this last night on the Insiders on NFL Network in Santa Clara, what it was that attracted him to McDonald in the first place. And he said it's how intentional he is with every thought. And he is. He doesn't do anything haphazardly. There's always a belief system kind of tied into every one of his decisions. And how much more he's gotten involved on the offensive side of the ball. We saw it in some of the mic'd up stuff from last Sunday, right? Where he's talking to Kubiak, where he's like, get it, let's go for it. Let's push it. Let's push it on this one. Or what was another one? There's another moment where he's like, hey, maybe think about a different way to run or something like that, right? You caught that moment. And he's getting involved, but he doesn't know why. He trusts his coaches. He trusts his players. But football's football. And I'm actually reading that Michael Silver book right now, The Why is Everything, and it retraces the Shanahan, Kubiak tree all the way back, and McVay and where those guys came from. And they were sort of at the forefront, and by they I mean all the guys kind of in that tree at offensive guys coaching defense and vice versa, and giving yourself a better understanding of the game. Raheem Morris switched over and coached wide receivers for years before going back to the defensive side of the ball. Mike McDaniel started out as a defensive coach and then moved over to the offensive side of the ball. And it just makes sense because you just think, okay, if I'm an offensive coordinator, if I'm going to work for the Seattle Seahawks, who am I going to ask about things that I'm thinking about doing or concepts that I want to incorporate in my offense? Well, I got the smartest defensive mind in the league sitting in the office next door to me. I'm going to go tell him I'm going to ask him what he thinks. Hey, what if I did this? What if I did that? How should I attack this? What are the holes in your defense? How would you not want someone to attack you? Like, I just think that sort of sharing of knowledge is just another level of getting the best out of what you have.
Yeah, I like what you said about Mike Macdonald being intentional. I think that mindset that Mike has leaked into the team, and it's been established into the team. I mean, I want to jump back to the NFC Championship game. Sam Darnold was playing with intent the entire game. 350 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was confident. Yeah, he was confident. He knew where he wanted to go with the ball. If it wasn't there initially, he'd stay patient, go through his progressions, find the right guys. And obviously the offensive game plan was so balanced. It was brilliant, truly. And one thing I like about Mike Macdonald as well is he is always moving with a growth mindset. He wants to adapt. He wants to adjust. If he even with the self-scouting, the self-evaluation, he's looking for ways to improve at all times. And I don't think not a lot of coaches are like that. I think some coaches are stuck in their ways, and for better or worse, sometimes it works for them, sometimes it doesn't. But with Mike, that's one thing I'm seeing that is different. You know, I don't think he's the same guy that he was week one today, and I think it's through a lot
Yeah.
of growth, self-evaluation, understanding where you went wrong, what you went right, building off what you did right, and learning from what you did wrong. And
Yeah.
I really do admire it, and it's really fun to watch as a fan because it instills so much trust in this team and the coaching staff, because that they can be critical on themselves, but they also want to succeed in the same way.
And he has that perfect combination of unselfishness and but yet ego. And you have to have some ego to be great at leading other people, right?
Yeah.
And we even saw the video that the team put out a couple weeks ago of his very first address to the team
Yeah.
after he was hired 2 years ago. And he seemed, to your point, he seemed much more uncertain about projecting himself, kind of in front of big groups. It's just something he didn't have to do a lot of. And you even saw him progress in how he dealt with the media and how confident he got and comfortable with that part of the job. But and just how much responsibility he cedes to his coaches, how much credit he likes to heap on them. And so that's the unselfish part. But you have to have ego too. And somebody asked him yesterday, like, hey, moving forward, do you see yourself giving up play calling duties? Maybe letting Adam Dirty call plays next year. And I loved his answer. It wasn't, he didn't hem and haw. He didn't craft an answer just to, so that he could be, so that he could heap praise on Dirty. He said, hey, we're just always going to do what's best for the team. And if me calling plays for the defense gives us the best chance to win, then let's go.
Yeah.
Like, he's not gonna make a decision unless he believes that decision will make them better.
Yeah.
Whether that's, something he does or something he puts on someone else's plate.
Yeah. I want to talk about Reek Williams real quick. Almost cost the Seahawks a trip to the Super Bowl, man. I like Reek. I think he's a very talented player. But he does have these, tendencies sometimes
Mhm.
and to not follow that Seahawks mantra, the mission over bullshit mantra, right?
Yeah.
So the MOB mantra. So tell me about Reek Will and Dan. Do you think this is his last game as a Seahawk?
I've been all over the map on Reek throughout his career and this year especially. Obviously the way he started and the impact he had week one and that loss to the Niners and how that seemed to impact him even in the weeks afterwards. He just seemed uncertain about what he was doing, and saw some film breakdowns about how poor his technique was. There was some thought that he was still kind of stuck in between, like Pete's old technique that he taught DBs versus what he's being taught now. And then it all clicked for him, right after the trade deadline. I think the realization that he was shopped, that was pretty widely known, and that he got to stay put. And then all the work that Mike McDonald kept telling us they were putting into the process and working with him on some of that stuff. And then, man, he was really, really good the second half of the season and made some big plays for us, helped us win some games. And then you have that moment again in the biggest game you've ever played.
Yeah.
He made up for it with some other plays, but it's I at the end of the day, like I think he's rehabilitated his image within that building a little bit. I think some of those reports, even going back to last offseason, from some really legitimate reporting that was done, that he just isn't an ideal version of what Mike McDonald wants his corners to be, right? A little bit more physical, a little bit more, coming up in the run game, and then also just MOB, right?
Yeah.
Just not doing that stupid shit that can cost your teammates, not hurting the team, as Pete used to say. I just think at the end of the day, unless he's willing to sign early, and I think they'll try. I think this is what the Seahawks do. It's how they operate. Here's what we think you're worth. We're not screwing around with you. We're not trying to go back and forth. We're not lowballing you, leaving some wiggle room. This is what we think you're worth. If you want to be here, this deal's here for you. If you want to hit the market, cool. But if he hits the market, he's gone. Because there's teams that are desperate for corners out there. There always are.
Yeah.
And teams will pay for traits and they'll pay for upside and they'll see what Reek could be still. And if he hits the market, he might get J.C. Horn money. And I think with the other things the Seahawks need to prioritize, and some of the other boxes they have to check, I just think that would be too much. So I think they'll try and get something done early, and I'd be okay with that. Certainly, it's always good to have good corners. But if he doesn't agree to their number and he hits the market, he's gone.
Yeah. Tommy,
Totally.
you think this is his last year?
I do. I do, because I think just watching Reek, and I've actually had an opportunity when I was with UNT to scout Reek in college when he was at UTSA. The tools have always been there. I mean, he's just been a physical specimen since he stepped on campus and switched over to corner at UTSA. But I think this is it, because like Dan said, he is going to get so much money in the open market this offseason, and his agent's going to tell him that. And that is probably going to be something that he can't turn down. And
he'll be a day one guy. If he hits the open market, he'll be one of those big headline grabbing. He'll agree to a massive deal on day one.
Totally. And you know what? It's going to be fine if he does, because the last thing Seattle needs to do right now is to start overpaying for guys to keep what they have this year. Yeah. You know, I think there are, I love that Seattle got Charles Cross done. That to me was the most important player of that entire draft class. I mean, Charles Cross has been phenomenal. Yeah. He's still so young. I think people forget how young Charles Cross really is. We drafted him at 21, 20 years old. I mean, so young. And so yes, I agree. They're going to give him an offer, and they're not going to budge. And if he doesn't want to take that and he wants to capitalize on the most money, by all means, do it. You know what? Get your money, and someone will absolutely pay for it. And if I had to make a prediction today, I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
And, the way that Schneider thinks about this stuff, and we saw it last year and how they went about the offensive line, like he knew once he missed on Fries, and I'm not so sure if they had gotten Fries, if they still wouldn't have drafted Grays Abel. That might have happened. But they had their sights set because they knew it was a strong offensive line class. And I think, I just got back from the Senior Bowl, and this draft class is taking its beatings as far as just overall quality, not measuring up to some of the ones we've seen in several years. But there are some good position groups in this class, and corner's one of them. And I think they know that, and so that fits into their evaluation. Like, they know they can get Josh Joe back at a much lower number as a rotational guy. And then they probably think, hey, at 31, 32, or even 63, 64 in this draft, we can get a starter level guy and just throw another young guy on a rookie contract into the mix. It's a pretty solid class.
Yeah, definitely. Well, here's a guy I know 100% they're going to pay for sure is Jackson Smith and Jibba. Dan, talk about JSN's year, man. Did you see this coming?
I don't know that I saw it to this level. I mean, almost 2,000 yards, basically having a case throughout the entire season, being, the best receiver in football. We saw signs of it, DK when he was hurt last year against, I think it was week 2 against the Patriots. JSN went off, and I think it was that Rams game right before the bye.
180.
Right? Yeah, big game, and so we saw that. It just, saw it on tape in college. His journey has been such a unique one. The guy didn't play football his last year at school, because of a hamstring injury. I mean, there were major question marks on whether he'd be able to hold up physically. I feel, as a guy, I'm dating myself here, certainly. But, it's one of the first pieces of ink I got, but I see so much Steve Largent in him. Like, he's obviously faster, but he's not a physically imposing. He's not a physical specimen. It's just the body control, right? It's being able to, we heard, I can't remember who it was now that was talking about it before the divisional round, about how it was one of the coaches, just about how he has no tells in how he runs routes, because he's able to just keep both of his arms in and not give anything away. And it doesn't matter if he's going left or right, he can leverage you off of that. And then he just seems to really thrive on the big moments. He loves those moments, but he's also totally selfless and doesn't get ticked off if he only catches 3 balls. He's kind of the perfect player in a lot of ways. And I've had some opportunities to interact with him and just have some quiet conversations with him. And the same thing that I said about John Schneider, like he's the most genuine, he's the sweetest person. I've met his parents. You can see where, the apple doesn't fall too far. Right. And, he's just a guy you root for. I hope he spends his entire career with Seattle. And one of the things I'm most excited about this offseason is these indications that we're getting now and some of the reporting being done that they're actually going to try to extend Witherspoon and JSN this offseason
Nice.
rather than applying the fifth-year option and waiting a year to get it done, trying to get out in front of it a little bit. And
Smart.
And I think they'll find a way to get it done too.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, JSN, I've described JSN to others as if you're a young wide receiver, just, in high school, college, I think JSN is peak teach tape. I mean, the guy's not a burner. He's not physically imposing. He doesn't have those just God-given physical gifts that, say, a DK Metcalf had, or, or Calvin Johnson down the right. So, like you said, he's so technically sound. It's almost perfection. He's got consistent hands. He tracks the ball extremely well. He does everything so well and doesn't have to force it off his physical tools. It's truly, truly remarkable. And when we drafted JSN, I definitely had some questions, and I'll be completely upfront and honest. I wanted Zay Flowers. Like I like that in that draft class. I did, and like that's the stone cold truth. And I mean, but JSN has been completely phenomenal, and I was scared based off the injury and the not playing. But you can go back and say the same thing. I believe, what was it? Jamar Chase didn't play his senior or his last season of college football either. So that's one thing that's worth like. But of course, in that time, unprecedented times, was definitely a bit scared off of what that was. But I so happy to be wrong. I mean, JSN is phenomenal, and there was a lot more there for him to uncover, and he continues to get better and better, and I'm excited to see what the rest of his career looks like. I mean, truly, truly phenomenal.
I think it's question number one that I'm asking any new offensive coordinator candidate is, how do you plan to use JSN? Right? Like, because that's something that Kubiak really, he tapped into from the very beginning. Week 1 was the best example where he kind of looked like he was the only option in the passing game. And even with the Niners kind of rolling their coverage to him in the second half, he was still able to make some big catches and give us a chance late in that game. Some of the stuff Kubiak did as the season went along, some of the adjustments he made to what teams were doing to cover JSN, putting him in the backfield has been just a genius little wrinkle. Teams can't jam him, can't press him. And so, those are things that I'd like to see still be part of the offense.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick and some of the noise surrounding the Seahawks. We heard about a sale, Jody Allen getting fined, then the Kubiak news. Look, it came at an interesting timing because like this whole season, like everything was quiet about the Seahawks, and now everybody's like, these random newses are coming out. But looks like John Schneider last night, he had like a Freudian slip, right? He said he confirmed that Kubiak was going to Raiders. So what did you think about that, Dan? And who do you think replaces him? Do you think it's an internal hire?
Well, first of all, as a former journalist, like I thought, where's the follow-up question? Like they just let that hang out there and nobody jumped back in. But I think they were short on, it was only like a 9-minute interview. I think they had some pretty strict time parameters.
Yeah.
But he just threw that out there. He's like, everybody know Kubiak's going to the Raiders. I'm like, damn. Okay, John. So I do think, well, first of all, go back to the beginning. I was wrong, and I've had to admit that I was wrong on my show. I thought Kubiak's like ultra extreme dry public persona and his really vanilla communication style. I just didn't think he was a guy that was going to appeal to owners, right? When it came time to choosing your next head coach, I just didn't think he was someone that was going to inspire a fan base. He's not going to win any press conferences, certainly. but the acumen, right? The ability and how he was able to conduct an offense and grow. I think he took another step as a play caller from what we've seen from him in the past, and even what we saw the first part of the season. You know, ultimately won the job for him. And also then recently I've seen some tape of him actually coaching, and he's completely different between the lines than he is behind the podium. And so good for him. You know, he's had it in his blood ever since the day he came into this world. And so, you know, I'm sure his brother will be joining him sometime soon as well. Although not if Shanahan doesn't ever let him get out of there and call plays.
Yeah.
But I'll say
He said
this.
he won't, right? He said he
Yeah,
won't.
no, he said he won't. And,
Yeah.
which is kind of a bummer because in a weird way, that would be the best pivot, right?
Yeah.
Can we just replace him with his brother? And it is ironic as hell that we're only in this position because Pete and Gino were so bad in
Yeah.
Vegas, right? If those two guys were just a little bit better, we wouldn't be losing our offensive coordinator today. I do think I have two thoughts. I think Arthur Smith is in play.
Mhm.
There's some conflicting reports about whether he signed his deal or not at Ohio State. They officially announced him on Sunday. That usually indicates he signed a deal. But we went through this 2 years ago with Ryan Grubb, and there is most likely nothing in that deal with Ohio State that would preclude him from taking an NFL job for a lot more money and a chance to call plays in the NFL. I've heard through some back channels, like not direct sources, but kind of sort of third and fourth hand sources that they have checked in. They have talked to Arthur Smith. We know that he was Mike Macdonald's preference when he was hired, that through the interview process, he talked about how Arthur Smith's a guy that he talked to and a guy whose offense he admired and was the style of offense that he wanted to pair with. And then Smith just didn't want to wait the process out, ended up going to Pittsburgh. So we'll see if that happens. But ultimately, I think, and maybe this is even the best choice, I think it's an internal hire. And I think we're fortunate that for the first time that I can ever remember, we have multiple options on our staff. Like Justin Outen, I know it was only for a couple of games a few years ago in Denver, but he has been an OC and he has called plays before. Rick Dennison's the guy no one's talking about that's on that staff, that's been a coordinator before, worked with Mike Shanahan and Gary Kubiak in this offense and called plays before. Does he want to do that again? Right? Is that something that's passed him by? And then Andrew Janocko was the guy that they let call plays in the mock game and in the joint practices with the Packers. So he would be a natural guy. And then Jake Peets, who's a pass game coordinator, who got some OC interviews with other teams this year, coached under McVay in LA. I find it interesting they didn't give him an interview last year when he was on the staff. But some combination of those four, I think, at the end of the day, I used to think it would be Janocko was the succession plan because they let him call plays in the preseason. I think it's out. I don't know if you guys saw McDonald a couple weeks ago talking about him in one of his press conferences and just how important he's been to the run game and even taking over the running back room after Kennedy Polamalu departed. I think he embodies, that part of the offense that McDonald wants to lean on. And I think if you promote some combination of Outen and maybe Pete stays, and Outen's got the run game background and Pete's the passing game coordinator, and then maybe you convince one of Benton or Dennison to stay and coach the offensive line. If not, there's some other options out there as well. But I think that's probably your best shot to keep as much of that staff as possible, because I know a lot of fans are afraid that Kubiak's going to take the whole staff with him. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Those guys are under contract. The Seahawks will try to be cooperative and obviously if a guy doesn't want to be here, if John Benton says, I want to go with Kubiak no matter what, cool. You're not going to keep him here against his will. But a guy like John Benton, I'm not so sure. Does he want to go take on another reclamation project and take another bad offensive line and try to make them good and do another rebuild? Or does he maybe, after coaching the league for 20 years, want to hang out in Seattle for 3-4 more years and maybe try to win multiple Super Bowls? So we'll see how that all shakes out. But I think Justin Outen is a strong candidate.
Yeah, and look, Benton was around, right? Like Kubiak, he's been moving his family around from city to city, getting a new job every time, with Kubiak, right? So
and he hasn't always been. That's a little bit of a misnomer. He hasn't always been with Kubiak. He wasn't with Kubiak in Minnesota. He was in New York with the Jets, right? He did coach for his dad back with the Houston Texans, and that's where that connection is.
Okay. Interesting. So I want to preview the Super Bowl real quick before we hop off. We got 15 more minutes left. Tommy, any last words on the NFC Championship game or the Seahawks?
No, I don't have. Feel like we've covered it pretty well here.
Awesome. So Dan, you've been on Patriots podcasts and talking to different folks over there in New England. What do they think about this matchup?
They're very confident.
Okay.
They feel very, very good about their team, and they are not willing to hear anything about strength of schedule, who they played, any of that stuff. And I get it. Like they're playing with house money. Like they weren't supposed to be this good, this fast. Like they did, theirs was a 1-year turnaround. The Seahawks kind of, they did a pretty masterful job of staying competitive, only having the one season with the losing record along the way since their last Super Bowl. Patriots did it the other way. They went all the way to the bottom and they've built themselves all the way back up. Ironically, with a guy who was my first choice 2 years ago to be head coach.
Yeah.
I didn't know as much about McDonald early in the process to make a judgment on him, but Vrabel was the dude that I wanted, but for whatever reason, there was no interest there at all. And they never really made a connection. But it's and with a young quarterback and with a great, you talk about a team very similarly to Seattle where they nailed their draft. They might've had the best draft in the league actually, as far as, legitimate snaps from their draft class, guys contributing directly to their winning this year. And then they went out and nailed a couple of key free agent signings too, just like the Seahawks. Milton Williams was a home run. Carlton Davis was a great signing for them. Quandre Diggs Stephon Diggs has been phenomenal for them. And I know he brought some drama in the offseason, and there's always been a question about his professionalism, right? And maybe even his commitment to his craft, but they're not playing this week if Stephon Diggs isn't a Patriot, right?
Yeah.
So the way they've built their team is pretty cool too. The one thing that's hard to put a finger on is the strength of schedule. Like that defense is good. You look at all the numbers, that defense is really good. They're top 5. They're right there with Seattle in points per game and some of the other metrics. But man, they played a lot of bad quarterbacks and coaches that ended up getting fired. And we went back while we were in Mobile last week and we watched some tape. We went back to, I think it was week 15 and 16. Wanted to see them against the Bills, the last game they lost, and wanted to see them against a really good offense. And then the following week they played the Ravens. So let's see them against this scheme, right?
Yeah.
Well, what I didn't realize is that the Ravens they don't run the same scheme. They don't run it the same way that McDonald ran it when he was there. So it wasn't exactly apples to apples. But we saw Buffalo just pound them with James Cook in the outside zone and get 4 or 5 yards a pop. We've seen them struggle to pressure quarterbacks. They don't really have that dynamic pass rusher on that side of the ball. And strength of schedule matters. Who you play matters. I think the Seahawks are in position to win this game because of what they had to go through the last 6 weeks and playing the 49ers and Rams twice, like we talked about. So I think they're a very good team. Their future looks as bright as anybody in the NFL. They are set up. You talk about young roster, quarterback in place on a rookie contract, cap space, all of it. They might be here a year early too. Maybe that's one of the overriding themes of this whole game is both these teams got here a year early. I just think the Seahawks are more prepared for this game, have been more prepared because of the path they've taken. And I just don't, they're not going to be able to run the football against us. And I think they're going to show Drake May some things he has never seen. And this defense is going to play with a violence that they just have not faced this year in going through the schedule that they were presented with. And so trying to talk myself into being less comfortable, but I feel really good about how things are going to go on Sunday.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'm going to echo what Dan said, though. My whole family's in the Boston area. They're all Patriots fans. The confidence is gleaming. So, except for one, my uncle, he's like, no, the Seahawks are going to blow us out. Okay. So I was like, I hope you're right. I'm going to listen to you.
I mean, in their defense, like they just never see their team lose Super Bowls. Like they're just used to winning.
No, they've been there and done that a lot of times. Yeah.
Like we're just going to win because that's how it goes.
Yeah. But overall, I feel very confident this Sunday. I feel good. I think the Seahawks have been tested.
Mhm.
They just played an offense last week with an MVP caliber quarterback, two elite wide receivers. I think that the Patriots offense doesn't present that level of stress on the outside that Puka and Devontae bring. Obviously, Drake May is a great quarterback. He's a young quarterback, though. And I think in these situations, he's going to see a lot. Like I'm got to keep echoing Dan here. He's hitting on the spot. He's going to see a lot of things that he hasn't seen, and I think Mike's going to do a good job of dialing it up. One thing that I thought about was, will the Seahawks dial it up a little bit more? And the reason why I say that and is because I think you can really get to Drake May. I don't love the Patriots offensive line. They've got some nice young pieces there they're building with, and they're going to get better. But
Right.
as we sit here today, I think there's an opportunity for Seattle to really get at Drake May with different stunts and blitzes. And the reason for that is also you can trust your guys on the back end against this Patriots receiving corps. It's these are more favorable matchups than what we've been seeing. And I'm not trying to disrespect the Patriots wide receiver room by any means. I think these are you can really trust your secondary against these guys if you want to dial it up. And with the different ways we can dial it up and the different looks, I think you can really catch the Patriots kind of all over the place. And I think that that'd be a good opportunity. The only thing that
Yeah.
does scare me. Oh wait, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, I was just going to say, in talking about Drake May and going back and watching some of the tape from late in the season, the reason the Rams give us so many problems when we've been able to sort of solve the 49ers is, Brock Purdy in that 49er offense, like Purdy's very reliant on rhythm and timing and anticipation, and we disrupt that. Mike McDonald and our defense were able to disrupt that. Stafford's just got that elite arm talent, and he can rip it into tiny, tiny, tiny little windows 30 yards downfield without hesitation. And that's kind of the kryptonite. That's how you beat a good defense, is you just have to be able to take risks and operate at an elite level like that. Whereas, you basically take plays that other quarterbacks don't even see as being possible. When I watch May, he's capable of those throws. He doesn't quite have Stafford's arm. It's good, but it's not great. And there just isn't the decisiveness on those kinds of throws. Like there's just that extra little hitch sometimes. And I'm with you. Maybe that blitz rate goes up just slightly this week, at times. Fourth lowest in the league, I think, throughout the season, and yet they're able to generate top 5 pressures. Maybe they do turn it loose a little bit. Maybe they show him a little bit more man-to-man than they did during the regular season. We saw some of that in the 49ers games. They dialed up their man coverage just slightly, just to throw a little curveball at you. But that little hesitate, he's not Stafford. He doesn't have the experience of Stafford. And that tiny, tiny little millisecond of hesitation, and you're doomed against this defense. And I just think it's going to be real hard for him to make those kinds of plays downfield.
Yeah, because that's what they bring up, right, Dan? Like in New England fans, they're like, look, if there's 2 MVP candidates and Stafford did this to the Seahawks, 800 yards, 6 touchdowns in 2 games, why can't May do the same thing? And I'm like, hey, Stafford
Maybe
and
when
May.
he's 37, he can.
Yeah, maybe when he's 37 and plays in this division and faces this defense, 2 times a year.
Right.
Maybe he can do that, but I don't think Drake May is going to have a monster game. I think this defense is going to play really good. Go ahead, Tommy.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Dan. This is a good one. If the Patriots win on Sunday, what do you think went wrong for Seattle?
Honestly, I feel so good about just how we match up with this team, that I think the only way they lose this game is if they put the ball on the ground. If they just have one of those weird games where they just never get a rhythm and they lose a couple fumbles. Maybe you lose maybe you muff a ball on a special teams play. We saw how that flipped the game against the Rams in our favor a couple of weeks ago. I honestly think if they play a clean game, and I felt this, I think I said like week 13 or 14, I did a show where I said, look, if they just play clean the rest of the way, they win the Super Bowl. And I still feel that way. If they play a clean game on Sunday, they win. I just don't see any. I do, of all the possibilities, I don't see the Patriots just coming out from kickoff to whistle and being a better football team and having their way with them. I just don't think they match up like that with us.
Yeah,
I
because
completely
all they
agree.
need is like, for me, all they need is 20 points to win. Because if you look at the most comparable defense they played this year would be Jesse Minter's defense, right? With the Chargers, like that's the most comparable defense. That's like Mike McDonald light, right?
Right.
They scored only 16 points against the Chargers.
Yeah. Yeah. And have you seen, I know it's a small sample size, it's only 3 games, but Mike McDonald, when he has an extra week to prepare,
Yeah.
right? In coming off buys in his career, he's played the Houston Texans this year, was coming off the bye, wasn't it? And that defense and everything, and we made them look uncompetitive. And then the other 2 times were against the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan and everything else. It's he's outscored teams. It's 3-0. I think it's 99-37, and never given up more than 17 points to an opponent coming out of a bye. And so I think you give a guy like that with that kind of brain and is as good a game planner and play caller as he is on game day, and I think he's going to have some things in store that the Patriots just aren't going to be able to answer.
And Dan, are you concerned at all on the offensive side?
I'm trying to be. Like I said, I'm trying to talk myself into a healthy level of discomfort just so that I'm prepared for anything. There was just, I think it's just human nature to wonder when the Kubiak news came down, like, is he going to be slightly distracted? I just don't believe so. He's so laser focused and he's so all about football, and Mike McDonald won't allow it to happen. I trust this offense right now. I do. I think how they're running the football, I think that'll continue. They've really figured out who they are. And, as much as they had figured out how to use Charbonnet and Walker together finally those last couple of weeks, unfortunately, Zach gets the knee injury. The silver lining there is Ken Walker's probably going to get 25 touches in the Super Bowl. And I think he's playing the best football that we've seen out of him right now. And I think Sam Darnold's playing the best football that we've seen from him this year as well. And I think Kubiak will have a good plan. I think they'll be able to take advantage of what the Patriots give them. And like, they're only going to have to score 20, 21, 24. Maybe I've got this game looking something like 24-13.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I was just about to get into predictions. So
I got one more thing.
Good.
Yeah. I've got one. There's one key for me for the Seahawks offense, and it's just they have to make sure that Barmore and Milton Williams aren't able to control the line of scrimmage.
Bradford. I'm worried about Bradford.
That to me is quietly a little bit of an X factor. Like for our offense at least, we cannot allow those two to control the line of scrimmage, dictate our run game, and force us into 3rd and longs, passing situations. We have to stay ahead of schedule on offense. But we want 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5, 2nd and 7's fine. We just can't get into these 3rd and long situations. That is where I feel where we might get into a little bit of trouble. But nevertheless, I do think the Seahawks match up very favorably. I think that they are the better team, and it's just going to be important for them to stay on track, not turn over the ball, just keep moving forward north and south.
Yeah, my Patriots buddies last night enjoyed telling me that when Barmore and Williams both play together, because Barmore had some injury issues this year, that they're undefeated, apparently, when those two both play. So we'll see. I mean, we have seen some good defensive tackles give this offensive line issues. Kobe Turner, certainly in the first matchup, kind of had his way. Even in the second matchup, really made some plays. But, if you want to feel better about Anthony Bradford and that interior offensive line, go back and watch the Titans tape. Watch how they handled Jeffrey Simmons. You can go back to week 5 and watch how they held Vita Vea and Greg Gaines without a stat in that entire game. And there was that drive late where they just pounded the ball down their throat and controlled the clock. And they were trying to pull that one out. I think they'll have a good plan. And I'd be a little bit more worried, honestly, if they had elite edge rushers than from the interior, just because I think, especially with that wide zone, I think you can
Totally.
you can run away from those guys a little bit and and some of the boot action that's built into this offense that Sam does so well. I think I have a lot more confidence now than I did, say, the first half of the season that Kubiak will have answers to those if early in the game he sees that we're kind of getting our butt kicked up front a little bit.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks can definitely handle Chason and Landry on that outside too. They're more of speed rushers, not the biggest, strongest edge setters. So if they get in a situation where those guys are both out there, I definitely think the Seahawks can attack that with them outside zone and get to that second level.
Yeah,
awesome. Well, hey, let's get to some predictions before we sign off. Dan, I'll start with you. What's your final score?
So I said 24-13, didn't I? I'll say 24-13. I think by the fourth quarter, the Patriots are going to be playing desperation catch up. I do. I think we're going to take the run away, and they're going to have to air it out a little bit more. I feel so good, not just about how this team's playing, and as we mentioned earlier, how they've been prepared for this moment by some of the opponents they've had to get through the last 6 weeks, but just how they're wired and their confidence level right now. I don't think it matters who you put in front of them. I think they're going to go out there and run through the Patriots, and maybe it might look more like Week 18 against the Niners than the divisional round against the Niners, for example, where at the end of the day, the score, maybe it's a 1.5 score victory, or maybe a 2 score win, to where Patriots fans can look back and go, man, if we had just fallen on that one ball, or if we had just, not missed a kick here, or when in reality, you look at the box score when it's all said and done, and it'll be a pretty controlling, comfortable decision in the Seahawks' favor, and I think they come away with the Lombardi.
Nice. Who do you think wins Super Bowl MVP?
So, just had this discussion with my old friend Dana O'Gorman. As soon as we're done here, I'll be posting that show if y'all want to check it out. And so I wanted to say Kenneth Walker. First of all, if it's a defensive player, I just feel like Nick Emmanwori is going to be at the top of the list because he makes such splashy plays and he has such an opportunity to make plays in different ways. He could have a sack and come up with a fumble recovery and have a couple of PDs. I think Walker is a natural one. I think at the end of the day, all of the focus is still going to be on Sam Darnold, that the bar is going to be a little lower. And if he just goes out and goes, 65% completions, 280 yards and 3 touchdowns, and we win going away, they probably just give it to the quarterback because they almost always give it to the quarterback. And because he'll have been the focus coming into the game, I think he's probably the favorite to win it.
Tommy, how about you? Your prediction in Super Bowl MVP?
So yeah, I've got the Seahawks winning 20-16. But hear me out. Okay. It's going to be 20-9 late in the fourth. And I think the Patriots are going to go desperation mode, grab a late touchdown. And I just think the Seahawks are going to run the clock out on them. So I think it's going to be 2016. Looks a little bit closer than what it really was.
It'll kind of look like that Titans game.
Yes. It's going to look a little bit closer than it really was.
Right.
Congrats, Patriots fans. You covered the spread. And, we're getting out with the Super Bowl. But my MVP, oh man, this is a tough one. This is what my gut's telling me, and I said it last night on the podcast. I'm going to go with Ernest Jones. I'm going to take Ernest Jones. I feel like he's going to make a play. I feel like he's going to make a big time play at some point in this game, and I'm just going to go with my gut there. It probably isn't the right pick, but I just feel like Ernest Jones is going to make a big play this game. Right. It's going to swing it. So
nice. Well, hey, you guys are pretty reasonable. I'm not reasonable. I got this. I got this as a 32-17 type of game. Like a game that kind of seems close until the third quarter, and then kind of like how we've seen that Atlanta game, and those games that the Seahawks had. I think it's going to be that kind of game. And for my Super Bowl MVP, you guys are not going to believe this. Cooper Kupp wins his second Super Bowl MVP.
Okay. So you're going to go like 8 for 120 and a touch?
Something like that. I think they're going to over-focus on JSN, and Cooper Kupp is going to just go playoff Super Bowl mode. He's going to have deja vu moments, and he's going to get this done for the Seahawks. So that's my predictions.
You know who would be the most fun, like who I would want to win the MVP, and it just kind of popped into my head? How about AJ Barner goes like seven for 90 with
that
a
would be
couple of
nice.
touchdowns. That'd be fun. Yeah,
That
I'd
would
love
be
to see
fun.
that.
That popped in my head. But it's not too bad though. On that Packers podcast I was on, one of the guys had it 35-13 Seattle. So
Wow.
they felt good about it. I stuck with 20-16.
I'd prefer that. I would rather there not be stress. I would.
Yeah, by all means, please.
Yeah. And look, every time somebody faces the Mike McDonald defense for the first time, especially a young quarterback, they're going to struggle, man. I think there's going to be some turnovers. There's going to be some stuff, and people are going to be like, oh, Vrabel's going to probably get Sam Darnold, but I trust Sam Darnold right now to take care of business, and I think he's going to get it done. Well, we're out of time, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we'll hopefully we can have you again after the Seahawks win the Super Bowl.
I thought you were going to say next year when they're in the Super Bowl again. How about we just make this an annual?
There we go.
Annual Super Bowl show.
The Super Bowl week.
Let's
go.
I
love it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Hey, you guys can check out Dan's podcast, Seahawks Forever, on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast, right, Dan?
Yes, sir. Yeah, indeed.
All right. See you guys, and we'll talk next week.
Thanks, guys. Go Hawks.